All right. So this session is going to be extension of the previous session. There are two targets we are trying to achieve here. First one is being intermediate expert in Python or intermediate Python user, and second one is being intermediate or intermediate user of Pandas, because Pandas is going to be one of the biggest part of your career in while we are doing machine learning with Python, because we will need to manipulate all the kind of data sets that we are going to get. So being expert on Pandas helps a lot, and there are going to be quite a lot of question in interview assessments also based on Pandas. All right, so we'll try to understand that. The things that we covered so far were Python's data types. We covered with strings, numbers, and then typecasting. We saw the container data types, list, tuple, sets, and dictionaries. And then we saw the conditional overflow. Today, we are going to start with the more on the for loop. Okay. And we can add the break and continue on top of it. All right. And then we will see more on for loop. And then we are going to see how the functions work. Then we are going to go into the Lambda function and their application. So there are two more additional function in Python which are used pretty heavily, which are map and filter. We're going to see that. We are also going to see how file IO works, basically writing and reading a file, okay, outside the scope of any other package like Pandas. We are going to see how we can import the modules and installing the package, and then getting the help is pretty important. Then we are going to see a bit of how to read a class code. For example, if you have installed a package and you are finding it very difficult to use, you want to go to the source code, and you should be able to read how the classes are written at least. You don't have to necessarily write the classes, but we should be able to read them. Everybody know what classes are, right, in programming? If not, then we will see that in the session. Okay. We will do a 5-minute revision. For the numbers, we had integral numbers and we had non-integral numbers. Integral numbers are integers and booleans. Booleans are also part of integers. Okay, they are kind of like integers. Okay, because they are rigid, 1, 2, 3. And then we have non-integral floats come in them, and we have complex number and fractions also as non-integrals. So there's a thing about fraction is that we cannot actually denote fractions in any programming languages. It's the most difficult thing for us to do. But we have only covered the floats. Complex and fractions we are never going to use in our data science career, especially the complex numbers. Then we went to the collections, the collection based data types, which we have three kind of data types there. We have sequences, sets, and mappings. So you can again can be divided in two parts. One is mutable and immutable. So mutables are list, okay. Immutables are tuple and strings, right? And then we have sets, which are mutable, which are set. There are more kind of sets which are immutable also, but we are considering them out of the scope for our course. Then we have mapping kind of collections, which are called dictionaries. So what mappings are? Which have key and value pair, which can be mapped with each other. That's why we call them mapping mapping kind of collections. Working with the string, we saw how to write a single and double quote using string using that, and commenting and doc strings, indexing and slicing the string, and common string functions we saw. And then we saw how to work with numbers and typecasting. Then we went to the container data types, list, tuple, and dictionaries. We worked with the lists, and we understood how the for loop work and how the list comprehension work. Everybody remembers that the for loop I explained, and then we explained, okay, how to convert the for loop into a single line. That conversion is actually called the list comprehension. The single liner of the list is going to be called list comprehension. We worked on the tuple and sets. We saw how they work. And then we moved to the dictionaries, and we saw how to index and slice the dictionary and the common dictionary functions. And we also saw one dictionary comprehension. Then we moved to the if and else flow, and we are going to move to the more about the loop. Okay, today is going to be more about for loop. All right. Anybody has any question from yesterday last session? Also, if you're not speaking, you can keep yourself at mute. All right.
I have one question.
Yes.
So your previous class videos are not uploaded.
Yeah, that's going to be uploaded today. We'll upload it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Any other question? All right. So we'll move on. Today we will try to move a bit fast also, because we have to cover the pandas also. All right. So first hour we will try to cover the all Python that we have to cover, and then we'll move to the 1 hour for pandas. Okay, it's gonna be too much, but I'm pretty sure we can cover it all. All right. So there's a inbuilt function called range function. Okay, this is the range function. It has a starting point, which is we give as first parameter here. Second point is where we want it to end, and then there is another parameter called step. So it has three parameters. First is start, and then stop, and the end. What range does is it gives us a iterator. Okay, it's a Python object kind of thing. It doesn't help us in any way. But if you want to see how it looks like, we have to wrap it around the function called list. Okay, we have to convert it into a list, then we'll be able to print it. So this is how range work. It starts from 1. Okay, and it's going to end 1 before the stop, exactly like how everything ends in Python, or if the steps are being followed perfectly or not. So if we have 1 to 10, and with the step of 2, start from 1, and then 2 step later we have 3, then 5, 7, and 9. Okay, 10 is not there, 11 is not there, because it's out of the scope for the given stop range. Perfect. So range is basically used as, if you have used C programming, you have I from starting and then end and then the steps. Okay, that's exactly how it's going to work for us. So we use the range function to generate an iterator, and then we iterate it through using the I, and then we can run the loop. All right, so in here we are going to understand one more concept, which is continue. All right, so we'll just initiate this code file.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Could you please share me this file?
Yeah, this has been shared in the chat window. Okay.
I just joined just now.
Yeah. Okay. I'll share it again.
Sure.
Yeah. Somebody can somebody copy and put it again on the chat window. Yeah. So a couple of people have put it all there already.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sure. So range is going to give us a iterator, which we are going to iterate through. It's arbitrary thing, and the I can be counted again following the iterator, and then we can use the I, and if we want to apply any if conditions, we can apply those also here. Okay, so here for example I have applied a condition I equal to 3. If this condition gets true, for example, let's see, the range that I have given is 5. So it starts from 0, 1, 2, and 3 and 4. First time the I is going to be 0, we are going to go inside the for loop, nothing is going to happen. Okay, and at the end we are printing I. It won't go into the for loop because the condition is not true, because I is not equal to 0. Then we will move to 1. This whole if statement won't work, and we will move to the I again. We are going to print 1. Then we will move to the 2. The same thing is going to happen. If statement will not execute because the if condition is not true, and we will just print 2. Then we will reach 3. When we reach 3, what happens is this condition become true. So if gets triggered, and we go inside the print here. Okay, and then we see we have printed it. Now here you see that I have written something like continue. What continue does is it's going to reset the whole loop, not reset the whole loop. It's going to stop the whole for loop here. Okay, and it will go back to the iterator, and it's going to go to the 4th number. After continue, anything that you see in a for loop is going to be stopped. It's not going to be considered in the loop again, but it will go back to the scratch, and it will just change the iterator. Right? Anybody has any question about continue?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Sir, we have not initialized the value of I here. So it will be by default, it will initialize to 0 or?
So this is what we explained in the range also, right? So the range function actually gives us the iterator values. So i's values are actually being initialized using the function range. So for example, the range that we have, let's
No,
see.
inside range, we are giving only one value, right? So the default value, like initial value, will be 0.
Yeah, so range actually starts, range is an arbitrary initial number,
Okay.
initialization. Okay, so this is going to always take care of what I is.
Okay.
For example, if I do this thing, right, 0 to 1, and this range if I use here, okay, so it's going to start with the iterator I being from 1, not from 0. So based on the range, how I have started the range, if I just use in the 5 here, it starts from 0.
So by default, it will start from 0. So if we want to,
Yes,
okay.
yes, range will by default start from 0, but if you want to give it a number, if you give a parameter, then you can start from anywhere you want. Yeah, you're correct then.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, and then we'll see break and continue both together. So continue, we have already seen how it works. Continue means that the loop is not going to break completely. What's going to happen is uh, it's going to skip the rest of the part after the continue, and it will go back to the for here. We have a question. Yeah, Satya, please ask the question. You can unmute yourself and ask the question. That's fine. Yeah, so this is what happens when we have continue. So what after continue, the loop is going to stop for a while. Okay, so after continue, so Satya asked the question that, okay, after when we hit the third one where we got it, and then why didn't we print 3 and directly we got to 4? So why it happened was, at 3 we went into the if statement here, and we were able to print it, so we got it here, and then we had the continue. So what continue did was, this loop for this iteration stops. Continue stops the iteration for the loop, and it goes back on the top. And now what do we have? Iteration number 4. So we are going to use the I equal to 4 again, and we are going to check if there is the condition is true. No, then this whole statement wasn't true, and we didn't go in, and we directly went to the print I. So basically, when the condition here was true, and we went in, we printed, got it, and then we had hit the continue. The moment we hit the continue, the rest of the loop actually doesn't work, and it goes back on top. All right, I hope this answers your question. Okay, let's move to the something called breaking. Okay, it kind of works like continue, but what break does, it actually stops the whole loop. Okay, if you are putting a if condition, okay, inside it, if you have something you want to do and you have put the break, so basically after the condition which has if we have reached the condition, it's going to break the whole loop. After that, we are not going to execute it anymore. For example, where we started from 0 here, we got 0. At 1 we got 1. At 2 we got 2, and at 3 we hit the if condition here. We went inside it and we have printed it, and after that we saw a break. The break means that we are going to exit the whole for loop. We are not going to go back, and we are not going to skip the rest of the code and go back. What we are going to do is, we are going to hit the stop for the whole for loop. Now we won't see any other iteration being executed. It's not going to go to 4 anymore. Okay, we are done there. All right, so this is how breaking and continue are different. So again, the same example of continue here. Okay, next let's move to the nested loop. So nested loops are basically loop inside a loop. Okay, so here we have a range of 5, and inside it I have started one more loop. So I have two iterators now. First is for I, and the second for loop has iterator of j, and I'm going to print I and j. So what's going to happen here is, so this is how iterator is going to work. For example, we have a range here, right? So first we are going to go to the 0. Okay, I is 0 right now. Then we will go to the next one, where we are going to see what is the value of j. So currently the value of j is the first element here when we are starting the loop. So we are going to get 0 and a. Now what's going to happen in nested loop is the inside loop, okay, which is the part of the master loop, the slave loop, which we, as we can call it, it's going to change. Okay, the value of the master loop is going to stay the same. Okay, then we get 0 and B. Then we are going to go to the C and then D, and sorry, after C we don't have anything here. So basically it means that the loop for the J is done. The moment the loop for the J is done, then we are going to go to the master loop again, and then we are going to update the iteration for the master loop. Okay, and then we are again going to go back to the slave one, and then we are going to have 1A, 1B, and 1C. Once the C is again done for the J, we are going to go and update the iteration for the first loop, where we are going to say I is now 2, and this is going to work exactly the same it worked previously. All right, so anybody has any question with nested loops and break and continue?
Sir,
Yes.
hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, sir, is it possible like break statement and continue statement can be like used in one loop simultaneously? Like I have to
Yeah.
print like 1 to 10, right? I have to go with like 1 to 3. I have to print. Like I will use that break statement and continue statement from 6 to 10. I have to print with the continue statement, right? Is it possible?
Yeah, so there is you have to do something in the if statement. What you are going to do is you're just going to write the
Yeah.
condition here. Okay, for example, you
Yeah.
wanted from 0 to 10 you wanted, right? For example, you're
Right.
saying that range 0 to 10 you have the range, but for 5 to 6 you don't want anything to be printed or anything to be worked. That you can apply in the if statement. What you're
No.
going to do?
No,
Yes.
if I'll give the statement like I is equal to double equal to 3, then
Okay.
I will use the break statement. Then the loop will be break at I is equal to 3. Then
Yes.
another statement I want to print like that, like from 6 to 10 I want to print with the continue statement. I will skip that for like 4 and 5.
Yeah, so if you are using break, your loop is going to stop. So you won't be able to
Okay.
utilize this anyway. Okay, you will
Okay.
have to use the continue to skip that. All right, or you
Okay.
have to write a better logic which can work for you. Okay,
No, no.
whatever. Yeah, the however you want to play, your if statement has to have a better logic there to make it work. But it's possible.
But he can write, sir, vice versa. Like start, continue, and then at the last of the code, he can put break.
Why?
Yeah, he can do that.
Yes.
Yes, that can be done. All right. Yeah, after continue, you can put the break. It's fine. Any other question? All right. Let's move to the functions. Functions are going to be pretty important for us because this is only going to be one of the things we are going to write custom. We are going to write by our own. So what is a function? So function is a piece of code which takes input value and returns a result. Okay. The input value sometimes can be empty also. It means that it's not going to take anything, but it's going to return us something out of it. Okay. So how the syntax is going to work is we are going to write something called def. Then we are going to, this is the defining, this is short for defining. So this is def. Then we are going to write space and the name of the function that we want to create. Okay, I want to create a function named remainder. It's going to have variable number 1 and variable number 2. And then I will go into the, I will use the colons to get into the function's definition. Here I'm writing that I want a to be assigned as variable number 1 and then percent size and then variable number 2. What's going to give us is remainder of a variable 1 divided by variable 2. This value is going to be stored in a, excuse me, and then we are going to return the a, right? So this is how a function can be written. We just pass all the values that we want to pass in and we perform whatever operation we want to perform on those values, and we store the output of that operation in some variable, and then we return that variable. All right, so for example here we have returned a function remainder, and if I execute this where my remainder 2 divided by 5, my remainder becomes, I get a remainder of 2. Okay, because 2 is divisible by 0 times, and then we have 2 remaining. Anybody has any question about the functions definition? How do we write a function? I hope not. Okay, let's go in a bit deep in the functions. So a function can be written empty also. For example, if you're writing a very large code and you don't want to write anything yet, but you can define it and you can give it a place. So you can just write function and then you have empty parentheses and then your colon, and next place you can just write a pass. It means that this is a function, it doesn't exist, but we will try to use it some way. Later we will just populate it. And if we just print the function without the parentheses, what happens is it just gives us a memory location where it has been stored. Okay, and this id can be used to find, okay, what is the id or what is the location of that function's memory place. Okay, let's move to print versus return. Okay, so this is pretty important part for people who are coming from non-programming background. What they do is they confuse print with the return in the function. Okay, so for example, if I have print, what's going to happen is it's just when I execute it, it's just going to print it. It's not going to store a for me. Okay, if I just copy it and if I see what is the value of a, it's not going to give me anything. It's just the function here, it has executed here, which has printed Ramnaran for me. This a is not doing anything for me. This is just the execution here which is making it print. If I want to get a function return me something, I need to put it into the return. So make your practice to put everything into the return and output store in a variable, and then you can see whatever you want to do with that. Okay, so this is print is a very big no-go for us. All right, never do that. So we are going to return a Ramnaran. What is Ramnaran right now in terms of a programming language?
String.
Yeah, it's a string. So my output, when it's a string, I can apply the string functions on top of it, right? So my output is something like Ramnaran, which is a string, and I can use the dot upper to convert the string into the uppercase. Okay, because my output is right now Ramnaran, which is a string. Let's try to fix it. For example, if I'm storing this into a variable called a, I can exactly replace a with here. Now I can see it works exactly the same. Perfect. So a is a string.
Sir, can you please scroll off to that function declaration?
Yeah.
So in a function declaration, no need any parentheses or anything like in between while starting the function and ending the function.
Yeah, we have done that, right? So here, yeah, there are nothing. It's just typecast, sorry, the white space based. Okay, you just can go here and then put the enter. The moment you go back to the tab, which was exactly here under here, when you get out of the loop of this tab, so this place, right, this space, if you get back here and you can start writing a new function also. So when you are done with this white space, which is this, we are done. And when you go back to this stage of your tab, this place, this cursor here, you are done. The carriage, basically the carriage is going to start a new line. So before carriage, everything is going to be under the function.
Okay, sir. Got it.
Yeah, there is nothing to be terminated. Once you have written the first line, pass the variables and then colon, and inside it, when you press enter, anything can be written there, but you have to just return the carriage back to if you want to start writing other code.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Let's move to the arguments for functions. So functions are going to have two kind of arguments. One is positional argument, okay, this is mandatory argument, and then there is default argument or keyword argument. All right, so here you can see that I have defined function func3. It's going to take two parameters. First is the number, second one is power. See here, you see that in front of power I have applied equal sign and then 2. So what's going to happen here is it's always going to take power equal to 2 unless I'm not modifying it, unless if I'm not changing it. Okay, it's returning the number and then power on top of it. Okay, so if I execute it, and if I just write given 3, which is mandatory, okay, I have to give 3 here, otherwise it won't work. For example, if I have just it empty, then I'm going to get an error that, okay, for the number you have not given any parameter to me. So it's going to return an error. I'm writing 3, so number has been assigned as 3 here. This 3 has gone as number, but power has been already given a value of 2 by default, so I don't have to type it in here. Okay, but if I want to change the value of power, what can I do is I'm going to use the numbers value here with the sequence exactly. I'm going to type in the value of power here, which is whatever I want. Previously it was default, it's 2, but I have given it 3 now, so it's going to return me 3 to the power 3. Now there is another way to do this, is when we have power variable, keyword is power, then we are going to write the keyword as power and equal to whatever number we want to give it. So both are valid. If you're following the sequence, number was first and then power was at the second place, the sequence is perfect. But if you want to give the name of it, that is also possible. Also possible is, even if your arguments are mandatory arguments are not key value, the default arguments or the key value arguments, we can still give them the name. We can still assign the values with their name also. So number equal to 3 I can assign, and power equal to 3 I can assign. It's going to work perfectly fine. Okay, so this is how what mandatory and keyword assignments are. Okay, keyword arguments are. So mandatory means that you have to give the value for it, otherwise it won't work. The default, if you don't give the value, the default value is going to be taken into the consideration while running the function. Okay, and one more thing to remember is mandatory arguments always come first. When you are defining a function, you are not going to define it like this. Okay, so you should not define it like this. Okay, mandatory argument always has to be at the first place. This is a wrong way to define a function. Never do that. Okay, we always want the mandatory argument first and then the default keyword arguments later. Okay, and while we are calling the function, for example, if I have one more variable here, which is I'm calling b here, okay, and I am using this way to call the function, which is a equal to 2, b equal to 2. It's not doing anything, it's getting into the code, but if I execute it, what's going to happen? It's going to give me an error, and you can see that position argument followed keyword argument. So what happens here is, once we have used the chronologically, once we have used the nomenclature of assigning the or calling the variables or assigning the value with keywords arguments, everything has to follow the keyword argument way. Okay, once you have done the keyword thing first, then you have to call every other variable or every other input as a keyword argument only. You cannot move ahead without it. So I have to convert it into power. Now it will work perfectly for us. Okay, anybody has any question regarding the keyword arguments and positional arguments?
Can you repeat that again, sir?
Yeah, so when you have a sequence of parameters that you are passing, okay, so initially the first place is you have to always put your mandatory argument in the first, and then you write your keyword arguments or your default arguments after it. Okay, this has to be true in all the situations. Once if you have utilized the keyword argument, okay, to pass in a value, the rest of all the arguments that you are going to pass here has to be a keyword argument only. Once, for example, this situation, right? So b equal to, if I have assigned here, then the next one I have to write the power spelling, I have to write it here, and then I have to write the equal here. Otherwise it won't work, it's going to cause us a problem. Okay, but if we are writing it like this, where initial all the mandatory arguments are given like this, after that I can follow it with the keyword argument or default argument. But at any point, if I have called it as keyword argument, the next cannot be just the mandatory argument styled calling of the variable. Understood? So we have to always follow the pattern that, okay, initial values has to be as mandatory argument. And then if I use the power equal to or the variable v2 equal to something, I have to follow this pattern always. Otherwise it won't work. Did you understand? Or should I explain it again?
Sir, here you have mentioned that b equal to 2, then comma 3.
Yes.
So is that like 3 is considering as a b type?
No, it means that it's not going to work. What happens here is Python always want your mandatory arguments first. This is the sequence you have to pass your variables. Okay, this is the sequence you have to always follow. Once you have defined it, for example, what keyword arguments do is, for example, if I want to have, let's write a new function. Let's try to explain it. Okay, so let me move the piece here.
And sir, please, could you explain how many default argument and how many keyword parameter we can access?
Yeah, we can give any number of keywords and those arguments here while defining. Okay, I'm defining a new function here. Okay, I'm calling it func temp. Okay, I'm giving it variables like v1 comma v2 comma v3. Okay, and I'm giving it a more value v4. All right, but there's something I'm doing here is I'm v3 and v4 I'm giving as default values. For v3 I'm giving a default value 2, and for v4 I'm giving a default value of 4. Let's not give it 4, let's give it 45. Okay, this I have given. Now the task of my function is return v1 plus v2 plus v3 plus v4. So for this part is clear, right? We have given mandatory variables here, and these are default variables. Perfect, right? Let's execute this function. I'm going to call this function now. Okay, let's see what all are possibilities, how I'm allowed to call the function func tmp. Okay, and I have to pass in the values here now, right? So v1's value 1 I have passed, v2's value 2 I have passed, v3's value 2 I have passed again. For example, I don't even have to pass that value, but I'm passing it. Okay, let's say v3's value 5 I'm passing, and then v4's value again I'm 5 I'm passing. Okay, if I execute it, it's going to work perfectly fine for us. All right, what else can we do is v4 I can type here equal to 5, and v3 equal to, here I can type. So basically I have changed the positions here, doesn't matter. Now what it's going to take is, for v4 it's directly go and give it value 5, and for v3 it's going to directly go and give value of 5. It doesn't matter, the positions are now not necessary. These are not positional arguments, correct? These are what? Default argument or keyword argument. With the keywords I can just give them the values here, any value I want. The sequence I can change with the keyword arguments. If I execute it, it's going to work perfectly fine for me. But there's a trick here. Another thing that I told you, that we can, for the mandatory arguments also, we can give the keyword again there, right? So if I want to write the v2 equal to 2, it's going to again execute perfectly for us. However, if I have v3 here equal to 5 and v4 equal to 5, okay, this is going to execute or not? So far, so we can be clear about it. It's going to execute or not? You can just
No, sir.
type in.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, it will not go to.
Yeah. So the thing is, it's going to execute perfectly. Why? Because 1, 2 are the mandatory arguments which have been given in a perfect sequence of their own. So the first place has been given to v1, the second place has been given to v2. For v3, we have given using the keyword argument. Okay. And v4 also we have given as keyword argument. So these are perfectly following the pattern of the functions, yeah, nature. But if I remove it like this, now is it going to work or not?
No, sir. It will throw error.
Yes, so it will throw us an error. However, How about this?
It will
It
again.
will work. It will work.
Yes, exactly. This is the point I was trying to explain, that once you have used this key value way of assigning a variable, all the next has also to be
Follow that.
follow that pattern. Otherwise, your function is not going to work. So mandatory arguments always come first, followed by the keyword arguments. Once you have started giving as keyword argument, the rest of the thing has to be given as keyword argument. All right. I think this part is clear now for everyone.
Sir, can we shuffle the variable
Yeah.
argument?
No, the mandatory argument you cannot shuffle. You have to have them like this. If you want to shuffle them, you can just give name for everyone. So for example, you can give the v1 for v1 equal to v2 equal to that. If you give, it's going to be fine.
So
But you have to,
if I give v2 equal to 1 and then v1 equal to 2, so it will consider, right?
perfect.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
All right. Let's move to the variable argument and keyword argument. So in codes, many of the places you are going to see something like star args and star quarks. Okay, the args can be changed to anything. You can call it star Amit, star Deepak, star Diwali, whatever you want to call it. Okay, star variable number 1, v type 1, v type 2. So these words are actually arbitrary, but most people are going to follow this convention. Star args and double star quarks you are going to get. So what star args and star quarks are? Okay, we have written a function here, right? The temporary function. So v1 and v2 are actually args because these are arguments. v3 and v4 are quarks because they are keyword arguments. All right. So how args and quarks works are, so args are put positional arguments in a tuple, okay, and the quarks we put keyword argument in a dictionary. But why do we use this? They are basically allow us to use arbitrary number of position and keyword arguments. So basically, if we want to assign that, okay, in the future, I want to modify the function in such way that my initial arguments are going to be my args, and then I'm going to follow with quarks. So if I execute this part only, okay, this is the way I'm going to write everything. So I have defined the function here. Okay, it's going to take some quarks. What number of arguments I'm going to take, I don't know so far. And the keyword argument, how many keyword argument I'm going to add, I don't know so far. Okay, when we don't know how many we want, we are going to utilize args and quarks there. I have executed this function, and in the function I'm going to pass the arguments. So R and Python are my arguments because they are not given as positions, correct? And then the pattern is being followed as a keyword argument for the age and name. Okay, if I execute it, what function is going to do is it's going to find all the arguments which are R and Python. These are the mandatory arguments. R and Python are given as mandatory arguments. And what are given as keyword arguments here in this whole function? Okay,
Age and name.
yes, age and name are keyword argument. Okay, and what is R in Python?
Keyword.
No, R and
Variable.
Python are positional
Variable.
arguments.
Positional argument.
Yes, they are positional or mandatory arguments. Okay, and age and name are keywords and default arguments. Perfect. So when we use the args and quarks which we have assigned here, it's what it's going to do is it's going to find all the arguments for us. Okay, and inside it stores everything in a tuple. Okay, all the keywords arguments are actually stored in a dictionary like this with the key and value pairs. All right, so let's see the reverse of it. Okay, for example, I have given a list of a tuple of R and Python. Okay, and then I have student in a dictionary. So if I pass this tuple here as a in the place of args, I can write it like this, and I can write the student in the place of quarks. I can write it like this. Now if I execute, these new values has been shown to us. Okay, I did not execute this one. Now it has given us keywords and normal arguments back to us. So this is an arbitrary concept. We have to just recognize that, okay, if you see star and double star things, it means that those variable has not been given to the function yet. Later on, you can pass any number of those and function has been written in such a way that it can take care of everything. All right. It's the beauty of the function writer. It's going to help us here. Okay. Anybody has any question about args and quarks? You don't have to understand everything, but you should be able to learn that when star and double star comes, what's happening there. It has been given as arbitrary number of variables that you are trying to add later on, but you have written a function in such beautiful way that how number of as many parameters you add in using star and double star, it's going to work.
Yeah, just we have to keep in our mind that only single star is for positional argument and double star is for keyword argument.
Exactly. This is the only point I was trying to explain. All right. Okay, let's move to the next part, which is lambda function. So lambda function is actually also called lambda expression. All right. So how it works is, this is a function that I have a number and then I have power, which is a default argument here, right? I'm going to use the number and I'm going to add the power. This is going to, how my function is going to work. Now, what if I want to convert this whole function into a single line? How can I do that? So this is how we do it. I write the name of the function, whatever we want. I put equal to sign there and I use something called lambda. Okay. And with the space, I write the input variable, whatever input variable I want. And then I type in colon and then I type in whatever operation I want to perform on the input variable.
Sir, we can't see where you're typing. Can you just scroll down? Yeah.
All right. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. So we have the function here. This exact function I'm going to convert into a single line because right now it's following 2 lines, correct? So this can be done using lambda expression. How we do it is we type the name of the function here, then equal to sign, then we use lambda, and then the input variable. I'm calling it input as x. Okay, arbitrary number, like we had I in for loop, right? I can be replaced with j, k, x, whatever we want. Exactly like this, we are just putting it a variable name, input as x, and then colon. After the colon, we are going to say, okay, what is going to be the operation performed on my x? This I have written here. Now, if I execute it with function inside it, I'm giving it 3. This 3 directly goes as x, and then it gets assigned here. So x is power 2. So I'm going to get 3 here. Okay. Now somebody is going to ask, well, can we given 2 variables as input? Yes, we can. So for example, here x comma y, if I want to do the x is power y, I can do it exactly like this. And then in function 5, I have to pass x and then y also here. Okay. And it's going to return me 27. Now somebody is going to ask me, okay, can we pass in keyword arguments also? Yes, we can. So keyword argument, which are default argument, we can also pass there. We just write x and then comma y, which is a keyword argument, and then are my colon, and then I define the operation of the function. And if I just execute it with y equal to default 2, it's going to work. If I want to change it to 5, it's also going to work perfectly. All right. Anybody has any question about the lambda function, how it works? It's pretty simple.
Sir, there
Yes.
can we provide that x equal to 2 and y value we can pass in function?
Y value we have already passed here, right?
No, I'm asking that inside that x value we need to pass and y value we need to pass inside function. Can we do that?
Like this, are you asking for?
No. Simply on the above statement, just put x equal to 3
Yeah.
and y equal to that only y.
Like this.
Yes. And here inside function 6 below the statement, we need to just pass that 3 only. No, remove that 2 and comma. Yes.
Yes. So this is not going to work. It's again going to follow the same terminology which we had in functions. Okay. Always remember arguments come first and keyword argument come later.
Y is also argument, right? Or it is keyword argument.
So see, again, let's see. So these things, when we are writing a function, okay, when we are not giving any name and equal to sign there, these are arguments. These are always going to come first, and keyword arguments are where we write the name and then equal sign and then the value of it. These are default ones. Okay. They always come after it. They cannot come before it. Okay. So here you have actually screwed up the sequence here. We don't want that. We want the sequence to be perfectly there. We want the keyword arguments, normal arguments here, and then followed by the keyword argument. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, I think that was your question, right? We cannot change the sequence here also. It exactly going to follow the pattern what we had in functions. Okay. Always have your argument first and keyword argument later while defining and while using the function. Be it lambda function, be it normal function. Doesn't matter.
Okay, so after 3, if we provide 3 comma 0, so it will override with 3.
3 comma 0 like this.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to work. So why it has been replaced by the 0 now?
Yes, y value will be override, right?
Replaced. Yeah, y is going to be
Okay.
overridden. That's it.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
All right. Any other question regarding lambda? All right, let's move next to it. Let's move to map and filter. So map and filter are like two most important functions which are used with the lambda expressions. So lambda expression actually helps us like in nice way when we are using map and filter for us. So let's see how the map and filter works and what those things are. Okay, so what map does, it creates a map object for us or a iterator that computes a given function with arguments from the iterable. Okay, so this is a confusing line. Let's see how it works. So map takes map and then we write a function here and then we write the iterable. Okay, now tell me what are the iterables? Can anybody tell me what iterables are in Python? We have seen like 2-3 iterables so far.
Numbers, like any kind of for loop or
No, those are integers. So basically the list is a iterable because it can be iterated upon. Okay, it can be iterated upon. So list is iterable, an
Array
iterable
also.
iterator object. Okay.
Dictionary.
Array.
Yes, array.
Dictionary.
Dictionary, yes, exactly. So dictionary and list, which we are always going to see, are iterable objects. Okay, these can be iterated. Now what we are trying to do is we are trying to map each and every element of that list. For example, here we have given a list. So we want to take the list and on each and every single element we want to apply this function. All right, let's see how what I mean by this. So this is my list. This is my list and I want to square of it. Okay, so if I have list 1 here, okay, if I want to do the something like this, list 1 square, okay, it causes a problem. Why? Because list, this function is being applied on the list, not on the elements of the list. Okay, to do that I'm going to write a temporary lambda function here which is going to take any input and it's going to give me a square of it. Okay, so first way of doing this was writing a for loop, or we can write it something like this, which is a single liner list comprehension also, right? So list 1, every element, for each element apply the temporary function of the element and then store it into the list. So if I execute this, I get the second list, which is the square of everything. First square, so 5 square, then 6 square, and 7 and 8 square. These are the values in the sequence. Now the same thing can be done with something called map. In the definition we saw that for map, we write the map and then the function we want to apply on each element and then the iterator, which is my list I'm going to type in here. So if I execute it, let's see. I'm just going to execute the map part. Okay, what do I get? Okay, I get something like hexadecimal thing. This is in the memory location. So I get a map object. I need to convert that into something which I can read. So I'm going to write a list around it. Okay, now I'm going to execute it. So this is going to give me the output. Okay, anybody has any question about map? I think map is pretty easy to understand for most people. The same thing with which we have done with the list comprehension or for loop, we are doing with something called the map function. Yeah, somebody has muted themselves. They can ask the question.
Sir, one question.
Yes.
So similarly, we are getting the values using function. So why we'll be using maps here.
Yes. Good question. I'll answer it later. Like 2 minutes, 1 minute later. Any other question? All right. Let's move to the next part, which is filter. Okay. The same thing, same exact thing we can follow, but with the filter, what is going to happen is we need to pass the function which going to return us true or false. This function has to be written in such a way that it only returns us true and false. So what filter is going to do is, this is my list. I want a function which is a conditional function. So what it's doing is it's dividing it by 2 and it's checking if the remainder is 0 or not. If the remainder is 0, it means that it's perfect. The number is perfectly divisible by 2, right? Now, can anyone please again explain me what this function does, what this part is going to do? Which I have just explained. Just somebody explain it to me so I can understand. Okay, everybody's understanding this part.
So
What this
x
function? Yes.
x value will be stored as the modulo of 2.
Yeah.
It will compare with.
Yeah. What does it do for us?
So basically, it will compare.
It will take the value from the list.
Even
Yes, exactly. Somebody was perfect. So it's going to check if the number is odd or even.
Yes.
Okay. So equal to 0 means that the number is even. Okay. And equal not, if this statement is not true, it means that number is odd. Okay. Then what we do is in the filter, this is the kind of function we are going to pass in the filter, which is going to return us true or false. We want to filter out all the even numbers out of it. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 we pass a filter kind of function. Its job is to figure out, its job is to see on this one element and see if it fits or not. Okay, so 1 divided by 2, the remainder is going to be not 0. It means that it's not going to be part of my filter. Okay, it's going to be thrown out. Then I will have 2 divided by 2, remainder is 0 actually, so it's going to be part of my output. Okay, then 3, it's odd number, it's not going to work. 4 is again even number, it's going to return us true. The function is going to return us true. It means that's going to be the part of the output. And then 5, again this function is not true for 5. It means that it's not going to be part of the output. Okay, now let's say the question was why map and filter are used. The simplest answer is because they are fast. That's it. That's all we have to remember. These are very, very fast. Why they are fast? Because they are not actually doing everything one at a time. They actually do everything at once on different core of your computer system. So they are basically optimized for us. Okay. That's the only reason why we use map and filter, and why do we need to understand those? Because they are like super fast compared to the for loop or list comprehensions. That is it. And it can be scaled to multiple values again, multi parameters also. Okay. Now, do we have any questions so far with map and filter? All right. Let's move on then. We will go for 5 more minutes and we are going to take 5 minutes break later. All right. Is there a problem if we extend the class for like half or 15 minutes more than what we have already planned?
No problem, sir.
No problem, right? If
No
anybody
problem.
has, yeah. We will try to complete it within the time, but if it require, we can extend it for 15 minutes, right? It should be fine with everyone, hopefully. Okay, let's get into the file IO. If anybody has problem, they can write a private message also, or on the WhatsApp, they can just directly text me if their messages are visible on the screen by any chance. All right, file IO, we are going to just read how the files are read and open. Just going to understand how it works. Okay, it's not going to be part of our daily life as a data scientist. We are never going to use this open function. We mostly are going to utilize the libraries which are given to us already. They do this job very well and they are very good at it. Okay, we are going to depend on the libraries, not the default open and close functions. Okay, so now let's see how the file IO works. There is a function called open. Okay, inside the open, we can write the name of the file, any file you want to open. Okay, this file doesn't exist anymore right now, but I just want to open this file. Okay, because it doesn't exist, what Python is going to do is it's going to create a new file for me. Just file.txt is going to create for me. Then there is something called this W. Okay, what these things are, let's see.
Writable?
Yes, exactly. So this is how open works. Open, the name of the file, and the mode. Okay, what are the mode? Okay, there are a couple of modes, the characters which are given. R means that open for reading. W means that open for writing. X means that exclusive creation failing if already exists. I have no idea what it is. Okay, never used it. R, W, and B and plus. These are the only thing we are going to use. R, W, B, and plus. What happens here is W means that we are going to, this file is open for writing and it can be text is going to be written in it. Okay. B means that whatever we are writing in that file can be binary. For example, if we are writing a image file, okay, then we are going to use the mode B. Okay. Plus means that it's for updating, but mostly you are going to get away with the W, right? Because we are just writing the text here. Okay. So I have opened a file. I have given it a name. It doesn't exist. So Python is going to create this for us. And then I have given the mode as W, means that I want to write something on it. Now, after opening this file, this has been assigned to a variable named F. Okay. On F, which is an object now, I can utilize something called dot write. And inside it, I can pass a string, which is going to write this whole string on the file. So if I execute it, and if I write on it, now I have written on the file. What I'm supposed to do now is I have to close this file. It's mandatory. Always remember, if you have opened the file using the open function, you have to always close it. Okay, otherwise it's always going to stay in your memory. And do you remember when you're trying to close a file and the error pops off that, okay, this file is opened by some other software. That's why we are not able to close it, close the software or close the file.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So when we are trying to delete that file, it doesn't make sense, correct? So this is exactly what's happening in that situation also in the backcode. The file has not been closed. That's why it's happening. So we need to close the file again. Okay. Now I closed it. Now if we go to our location, here there was no file here. Now we have just created a file. Okay. This is the file, the 0th line and the first line, which we have written. Let's again see that. I'm going to delete this file here. There's no file right now. I'm going to open it. It means that it's going to open a new file for me. If I just reload it, I can see that new file has been created. Inside that file, I want to write something. And now I always have to close this file. Perfect. So 3 steps of opening and closing and working with the file. Always we have to follow. Let's try to see what is the better way of doing that, because sometimes we are going to forget the close thing. So what happens in Python is it has given us a very special line with, then utilize open here. Whatever you wanted to do with the open, you do that. And then you apply as space F and then colon. And in the next line, whatever you want to do with that file. So f dot write I wanted to do. I'm just going to write in these things. And then when I execute it, it's going to create the file for me and the file is automatically going to be closed. All right. Is that clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So this is how we open, we write on the file and we close the file. Now let's see how do we read the file. So exactly the same code, okay, with open, okay, we don't have to pass any different mode here. We can just, if you want, we can just type in the mode of R. It means that we are trying to read it. By default, read is given as mode, as F, and read data, F dot read I'm going to pass in. So now what happened here is read data has stored all the values that we had in the file and it has been stored in the read data now. But my file has been closed automatically. I have read it, I've stored the data in something called read data, but the file is closed. I don't need that file anymore. Okay. So this is how we read in and out the files.
Sir, I have it down.
Yes.
What if I need to place that file, the new created file, need to be located in a specific location?
Yeah, you just pass in the location where you want it.
Where?
Like this. For example, this is my location, C drive. That's it. It's going to go there and create that file for you there.
Okay.
Most of the time. Any other question? We are never going to utilize this in your whole data science career. 7 or 8 years of my life, I have never used it. All right, let's move to the next step. Within 5 minutes, we are going to finish this part and then we are going to have a break. 10:45, remind me to take a break, right? Let's move to the importing modules. So this is how we can import the modules. Import and the name of the module. What happens after it is we have the module and we can utilize the function of that module. For example, if I want to import log10 from the math, so I'm going to import it like this: import and then math, and from math I want to pull out a function which is math dot log10. I want to pull out and I want to apply this log10 on 25. So this is how I can import just with math like this normally. Okay, there's another way to do that is by aliasing. Okay, so alias I'm going to give for math is m. Okay, now I have used something called as m. So this m can be now replaced as is the substitute for the math. So I can use the except for the math, I can use the character m here. Okay, and it's going to work perfectly for us. Next one is if I want to import just the function. Okay, so I can do is from math just import the log10 for me, and it's going to work exactly like this. We don't have to call using m dot or math dot. It's going to work clearly for us. And then there is something called star also. What happens here is math is all the function in their entirety with the default name are going to be imported. I don't have to use any special character for it. Okay, this is how we import the functions in different way. Many places you will see import as, from, import, right?
Sir, import
This is how
star
they
and
work.
import math is same, right?
Yeah, so no,
From
from,
math import star, and when you're importing the complete import math is the same, right?
no, it's not same. Here we had to use math dot log10. Here I am just directly using the log2 or log10, whatever I want. I don't have to call it with the math dot or m dot. They are exactly
I
same.
understood that. We don't have to
Yes,
use alias in that. I'm saying that all the functions are being exported in the both.
yes.
Okay.
But while calling them, we don't have to give the alias. That's it. That's the difference.
But
It has been imported its own name. Okay, here log10 it's not going to work. Okay, here it's not going to work. But if you import it like this, it's going to work because now it has been imported as its own default name when we use the star. Okay. Okay, let's move to the installing packages. How do we
sir,
install? Yeah.
instead of star, can we import
No.
specific package?
Yes, that we have already done. For example, here we
Okay,
have
import
imported
log10.
the log10.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other question? Because I think there are a couple of questions on this part also. All right. I think, yeah, we're done with the question on importing. Okay. Let's move to installing packages. Mostly you won't need to install packages on Google Colab. But if you have to install packages on Google Colab, or even if you're working on Jupyter Notebook, you just write it like this: exclamation, then pip. Okay. Then install and the name of the package, and it's going to work pretty fine for us most of the time. So basically if you are trying to utilize any package, you can just search for that package. You will be taken to their PyPy website where they are going to give you the instruction how to install the package. Most for every package we have to follow the instructions. If there are any specific instruction, we should follow those, or otherwise just using exclamation pip install and the name of the package works pretty fine. Okay. There is nothing that we can explain more about how to install, because there are many other way to import the packages, but this can get out of the scope for us for now. If you have any problem, you just go. If you're trying to install a package, if you need those, you just go to their website and they are going to give you a specific instruction also if they are required. Otherwise, just type in the name of the package, the correct name, and it's going to install for us.
So is there any command to see all the package names?
Yes, there are actually, but it's better not to see here. It's good for the Jupyter and command line there.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there everything can be seen. There are commands actually. Getting help. So to get help, there are like couple of ways to do that. First is use the help function. Inside it, you can pass whatever the help you want to get. For example, here, I want to get help on map. Okay, it's going to give us all the details on the map. Okay, how this function works. Map is going to take as a function, and then it's going to take iterable, make an iterable that computes the function using the arguments from the each of the iterables. Stop when the shortest iterable is exhausted. Okay, so this is how we can get the more details on any function we want. Okay, question mark map is also going to give us something like can help in a perfect docstring help here. Okay, the double question mark also gives us more detail on help if you want. Okay, so basically help and double help actually works how the person who has returned the package has returned it. Then we can also have something called dir. Okay, dir mostly work for objects which has already been created. Okay, so for dir to make it work, we need to take something like this. Hopefully, I just hope it works. Yeah, so these are all the possible functions that can be performed on this map object. So map has class. These are all the things that we are going to see what these things are actually. Okay, so basically this is we are going to get help using the help function, single question mark and double question mark. Okay, then something called dir. Dir is used for objects which has already been created. For that we will try to understand what object oriented programming is. Anybody has any questions so far with the help? How do we get the help? And one more most important way to get help is, okay, so Google or Stack Overflow is going to have almost all your answer most of the time. It's for the personal uses. Otherwise, you can ask me for any kind of help in machine learning and Python programming for data science. Anybody has any question till help?
No, sir.
All right. Okay, so we are going to take a 5-minute break. We are going to come back at 10:50. Hopefully that works. I'm going to stop the recording.